There are several topics that have divided the opinion of the community when it comes to the interpretation of the Age of Sigmar rules, but nothing has created quite the same stir as summoning. A mere mention of the word is enough to drive some people into a frenzy. But which side is actually correct? Are either side right? Should we just play it however we like? I'm going to lay out both sides of the argument for you, and then you can make up your mind. So let's get this sorted once and for all, shall we? The Great Summoning Debate. So here we have an undead army. We have some dire wolves, a necromancer, and some crypt horrors, and here are their war scrolls. Now, one camp believe that this is your army. No other war scrolls are part of it. So, if we look at the necromancer's scroll, there is nothing on here that mentions summoning whatsoever. And if it doesn't explicitly state you can do something, you just can't do it. For example, in the rulebook it doesn't state that you can pile up your models on top of each other to get more attacks in, so it's assumed that you can't do it because it doesn't mention it in the rules. And on the Necromancer's War Scroll, no mention of summoning whatsoever. If we look at the War Scroll for the Crypt Horrors, the Summon Crypt Horrors ability is on their War Scroll. So, the one thing we can all agree on is that by having this War Scroll as part of your army, that means that the Necromancer can summon further Crypt Horrors. The same applies to the Dire Wolves, as you can see there. Summon Dire Wolves. So, Camp 1 believe that this is it. You can only summon the models that you already have in your army along with their War Scrolls, and that all of the War Scrolls are out of bounds. What would throw a spanner into these particular works would be if it said, on the Necromancer's War Scroll, for example here, if it said, this Necromancer may use summoning abilities. See other undead war scrolls for more information. If it said something along those lines that let you know that he could summon outside of the army's war scrolls, then that would clear it up completely. It doesn't say that. So if we're going with you can only do precisely what it says on your war scrolls and in the rules, you're only going to be able to summon dire wolves and crypt horrors. So moving on to argument B. We've got the same army, but what these people believe is that all the undead war scrolls are also part of your army, even though they're not represented with models on the battlefield. You still bring these along as if it's an army book. So that means you'd also be able to summon zombies, crypt ghouls, skeleton warriors, black knights, anything else that has a summon spell or a raise spell as part of their war scroll. So really the question is, at which point do you take this pile of war scrolls into account? Is this part of your army even though there are no models there? It doesn't say that in the rules, but are you supposed to assume that you're entitled to every war scroll in the army because you look at it like an army book? Are you entitled to every war scroll in the entire game? If, for example, in another army, there is a war scroll that states units with the wizard special rule may raise this unit, does that mean that you are able to do so with the Necromancer, even though he's from a different army? Like I said, it could all be cleared up with one very short sentence on the Necromancer's War Scroll, but this is why we have the debate. Because some people see these War Scrolls as part of your army, and some people don't. At which point do these War Scrolls become active? Is simply owning them enough? Is the fact that they exist enough for you to summon the units from them? Or do they only come into play if you have those units on the table? Would it be enough to have a unit of Black Knights in reserve? In which case, do you factor that in when deciding if the game's fair or not? Do you look at those Black Knights as part of the army when your opponent is also putting down their models, so that they'll adjust their number of units accordingly? Or is that something completely outside of the regular, self-regulated constrictions? Some people say, well, how many models are you expected to own? If you have a unit of crypt horrors, are you expected to own a second unit just to have the ability to summon some of them onto the battlefield? And I would say that seems like something that Games Workshop would probably intend if they want you to buy more models. But on the other hand, do I necessarily support that choice? What I think might be a good idea would be to use the summoning rules as a framework and build on top of that in your particular scenarios. For example, having a particular graveyard on the battlefield, and when you're in that graveyard you gain the ability to summon certain units. Perhaps agree beforehand that there will be a couple of war scrolls that will be open for summoning. Whatever fits the theme of the game is what I think we should go with, because I don't think either side can ever claim to be 100% right unless we get some kind of clarification, which chances are we're not going to get. Well, let me know which side of the fence you're on, and then I'll tally them up, and we'll find out exactly who is in the majority here. But at the end of the day, as long as you're having fun and your opponent is having fun, does it really matter?